quick tutorial on some Decentraland coding today. Um, so to get started in Decentraland coding, we are going to go to our documents page, which is docs.decentraland.org, and we're going to go to for content creators, and then we're going to go to the SDK 101. From here, you're just going to make sure SDK stands for Standard Development Kit and is what you use to code anything in Decentraland. It's as you can see, it's TypeScript. It's all written in TypeScript mostly. There might be some other stuff, but for the basics, definitely all you need is TypeScript. To get started, you're going to make sure that you have Node.js downloaded, version 14 or later. It's very easy to download this. Just click here and download whatever version you want. I have it downloaded, so there's no reason for me to do that. But after you have the Node.js downloaded, what you are going to do is you are going to open your terminal. You can do that by searching here, terminal or CLI, command line interface. You're going to open that by searching it however you do on your computer. I'm on a Mac, so I use my Spotlight tool and just search terminal. And then you're just going to copy and paste this npm command. npm stands for node package module. And then we're installing -G is a global command, so we're installing globally Decentraland, the node package module for that. So we'll be able to work with all the node packages that Decentraland requires. I've already done that, so there's no reason for me to do that. But if you're just getting started, you need to just run this, press enter, shouldn't have a problem. If you do have a problem, you can just run this command, but just type sudo before, and that will allow you to do it as an administrator. So just type sudo, copy and paste, and then you'll type in your password, and you can run that as an administrator. Once you've done that and you have the node package modules for Decentraland installed, what you are going to do then, if you want to work on a blank file, is you are going to just create a new folder, totally new folder. Right, we're just going to call this DCL test. Oops, the wrong window. We're just going to call this DCL test. And as you can see, when I open it, it's just a blank folder. There's nothing in it, nothing to do. So we're going to set this up as a Decentraland folder. So I'm going to right click this and click new terminal app folder. From here, I'm going to run the command DCL space init. This is just going to set up our file as a Decentraland file. And you can see right now it's giving me a couple different options. What do I want to make? A scene, a smart object, a smart wearable, or a library? To keep it simple today, we're just going to go with a scene. Once we click enter on that, it's going to give us a couple different options of what scene to make. These are all just test scenes. And we're just going to do a simple cube spawner just to kind of show the basics here. So after you press enter there, it's going to download it's going to install the dependencies, download everything it needs, and then it's going to set up the file for as a Decentraland file. Coding in Decentraland is pretty simple. It basically is made up of three different things. You got your systems, your entities, and your components. Systems kind of control things. Entities are kind of those things that you're controlling, and then your components are like descriptors of those entities. So if you want to set the scale of a entity, that would be by editing the transform component of that entity and going and editing the scale. So now we've run this, you can see that our file is set up as a Decentraland file. So we have everything we need. We have our scene.json. This is going to be where all of our metadata is. So if you need to change the title of your scene, the description, the icon, the name author. If you want to change it to be your parcels, you're going to have to do that if you want to deploy. So that can all be found here. If you want to add a spawn point, if you want to add some restricted actions like auto dance or teleporters, you'll have to add those into required permissions here. I can show you how to do that later. But for now, we'll just keep it simple. So you can see that this is just a one parcel build. It's going to build on parcel 0, 0, and the base is on 0, 0. Your base should always be your southeast corner. If you're doing a bigger build for one parcel, it doesn't matter. But if you're doing a bigger build, just keep that in mind when you're building. But we're just doing a test right now, so we're just going to leave this as is. The actual coding that goes into the scene is going to be found in your game.ts. If you want to start doing bigger projects, you're probably going to want to divide your code into separate TypeScript files. But for something simple, it's fine to have it all in one file. So here's what the basic code looks like for the scene. You can see we're setting up a system, which is just a rotating system. And then we're adding this entity. We created a function to spawn cubes, and that just creates a new entity of the cube. And then we're adding a transform component to that cube, and then we're editing the position of the transform component. And then we're adding some other components. We're adding a box shape. We're adding stuff like this. On pointer down component. This used to be on click, but on click is deprecated now. So now we use on pointer down. And to get this scene going in a local server, you're just going to run DCL start here in your terminal on the folder. So again, this is running on the folder itself. You need to make sure that you are in your folder here. And yeah, so let's see what happens. It's going to check if the SDK is installed, and it looks like the SDK is installed. So here we go. It's going to pull me up on a nice local server. And then when this loads, I can start showing some of these elements of code that are building up this scene. So again, it's divided into three things: systems, entities, and components. So right now you can see in our test scene, we only have this basic cube. But if we look into our code, we've added this on pointer down component. So on pointer down means when you click it, it's going to get the component, the transform component of the cube, and then it's going to get the scale, the z scale, and it's going to multiply that by 1.1. It's going to get the x scale, and then it's going to multiply that by 0.9. And then it's also going to spawn a cube at a random location. And these are just creating the random location. So let's see what happens when we click it. Oh, nice. It clicked. You can see that it is getting a little thinner. It's getting a little wider also, and our rotating system is what's keeping it rotating. It's also spawning these random cubes, and that's good. That's what we want. That's what the code says, so that's what we want. So that's good. So now you might say, okay, that's wonderful. That's how we make a basic cube. But how do we change anything else? Okay, well, the best resource you're gonna have to get started is the documents page of Decentraland, and you can go here. There's a lot to go over, so I'll just do a brief dive here. But so if you want to, get the shape components, here are all the basic shapes. You can go through here and research a little more. If you want to make it a cone shape, you can make it a cone shape. We can go back to our code, and instead of adding a box shape here, let's add a cone shape. See what happens there. Now, it's not going to load because I did that in a different window. But if I go back and save it again, it should load. And now we have this cone shape. Huh. And the same thing's happening. When I click it, it's getting a little wider. It's spawning other ones. You can see that these are outside the bounding box, so it doesn't like that. But yeah, everything's working as it should. If you want to import an actual model here instead of this, well, first of all, let's remove this rotator system. You're always going to want to make sure engine adds whatever you add. If you don't make your engine add it, it will be in the scene, but it won't be rendered. So if I take out this right here that says engine add cube, the cube is still going to be in the, or engine add entity cube. The cube is still going to be in the scene, but it's just not going to be rendered. And if you can see all these green lines that are canceled out, that just means it's not going to read it. The code's not going to read it. It's for human reading. So I can read it, but the computer's not going to read it when it goes through these codes. And you can do that by just doing command /. So you can see that I took out this add entity cube, and now there's nothing to add. It's still in the scene, but it's just not being rendered. When we change that, oh, it's back. Nice. It's not a cube anymore, but yeah, it's nice. So you might be saying, okay, that's wonderful for a basic shape, but how do I add my own shape? So if that's the case, you can go here to the documents page, go to 3D models, and just copy and paste this little line of code right here. And then instead of when it says add component cube shape, we can do, it says my entity because it's the name of the entity, but we're just going to change that to cube because that's the name of our entity. You can see it's adding a new GTL shape, model slash house. Okay, wonderful. But we do not have a model slash house. So if we go back to our scene, save that again, nothing's going to load because it doesn't know where to find this. So what we have to do is we have to go back to our folder, and we're going to have to create a new folder here called models. I rename this, call it models. Then our code knows where to find our models. And let's make it as easy as possible for our code to read. I'm not sure what GLBs I have on here, so I'm just going to find a random one. And let's just see what I can find. This is from my Star Quest play to earn, so I'm just going to grab whatever model I can find here. We're just going to get, sure, we'll get Bob, sure. I'm going to duplicate Bob, drag Bob out here, close Star Quest, we don't need it. We're going to rename Bob, instead of Bob copy, we're just going to name him straight up Bob GLB. We're going to drag him into our models folder of our test scene. Then we're going to go back to our code, and all right, so it's adding a component GTL shape and models, but we don't have a house. We need to make sure this is labeled properly so the computer can follow the path, and that is going to be Bob.glb. Oops, .glb. Let me just make sure that I've done all everything needs to be case sensitive. This is a string, so it needs to be exactly as you see it. But yeah, so now when we go back, let me see if this will work. We might sometimes when you add new models completely, you might have to refresh, hard refresh or clear your cache and refresh, because I do tend to find that sometimes it's hard to, just like do a refresh like that and it'll be fine. But you can see Bob is here. Our new model Bob is here, and now he does the same thing. He's going to get a little thinner because we haven't changed that on-click component, and little Bobs are going to spawn everywhere. But yeah, so that is the basics of how to get started in Decentraland. Again, there's three major things here: the systems, which kind of control the entity. At first, we had our rotator system, but we deleted that. Then you have your entities itself. Our entity is just our cube. And then we have components that define the entity. So yeah, I think that's a good place to, get started and start messing around. You can look up any component on the Decentraland docs website if you're looking how to do something like, anything. How do I change the material of a text? They have a whole page with materials, and this is how you do it. There's certain things you need to know. For instance, you can only change the materials of a primitive shape. You can't change the materials of a custom GLB. But you'll learn all that later. This is a good place to get started. And then if you want to deploy your actual scene to Decentraland, you are going to so you can control C to end this server, and now this is doing nothing. If you want to deploy it, you're just going to type DCL deploy here in our command line and press enter, and it's going to create this. You need to sign, and then this is actually going to connect us to all of Decentraland. It's going to pull up this linker app tab, ask me to sign in. But I can't deploy it because I don't have permission for this land because it's on 0.0. But as I mentioned, if you do change the scene.json data to your own land, it should be fine, and you should be able to deploy it. And then you can just click sign and deploy here, and then you're good to go. If you have any errors, your CLI will tell you those errors, so just make sure you're looking at your CLI. But yeah, that's the basics. If you have any questions, please feel free to DM me or leave a comment. Thanks.